So our second subsection of chapter 1 talks about the difference between micro and macroeconomics, which for those of you who are in macroeconomics are probably groaning, going, we did all this already. But we have to just establish this baseline so that we know what we are talking about. Economics, and the book in this particular, this macro book does a very good job of talking about the overlap between micro and macroeconomics. They are not these distinct and separate things, but they are actually things that help to inform one another. But first, let's go ahead and get the definitions in here, right? So microeconomics focuses on individual agents. Within the economy. So households, workers, businesses. Whereas macroeconomics focuses on broader issues like growth. So how much are we increasing the amount of things that we're producing? Unemployment or employment. How many people are not only out of a job but actively looking for a job? Inflation, what's going on with the general price level? Is it increasing or decreasing or staying the same? And lastly, trade balance. Well, also government trade balance, and you could think about the budget balance as well. The government budget balance. Always a topical subject since every year they threaten to shut the federal government down. The debt ceiling, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just constant now. They're definitely the Chicken Little, the sky is falling kind of thing, and at a certain point, like, nobody's going to believe them. So if you're only going to read a little bit of this book, a little bit of this chapter of the book, because of course you're going to read the book, of course. But if you're only going to skim through and then really read parts of this chapter, the 1.2 part about micro and macro and where they talk about the lake is really great, right? So it talks about how microeconomics is the study of the algae in the lake, right? It's the study of, a certain type of fish and, how healthy the fish is doing or something like that, right? Macroeconomics is looking at the totality of the lake. It's looking at the ecosystem of the lake. It's looking at how the fish eats the algae and how that impacts the fish's health, and then how, just how the whole system operates together, right? How the birds that land in the water might impact it, or the stuff that's blowing in from the local fauna, whatever it is, right? But micro is looking at the individual things that are part of the lake. Macro is looking at the lake as a whole. So you might have heard me talk about forest and trees before. That's old school metaphor. That's not as good. The lake is great. Algae, micro, and the full lake for macro. Some other economic terms that we want to talk about real quick are monetary policy. So monetary policy has to do with money. That's why it's in there, monetary policy, right? And this is a policy that is determined by the central bank. And if a country doesn't have a central bank, then it's determined by what are called the monetary authorities. Because sometimes it is just the treasury that also runs the central bank, which is never really great because central bank should be independent, but that's a whole nother topic for another situation. We have a central bank. The monetary policy, so these are the people that run it, and the goals of it are they want to alter the level of interest rates the availability of credit in the economy, and the extent of borrowing. So in a way, monetary policy is often referred to as, gassing the economy or pumping the brakes on the economy, right? So they use different tools to alter the level of interest rates to try to alter real business cycle performance. They have a dual mandate to both. So our central bank, not all central banks do, but our central bank has a dual mandate to keep inflation at a reasonable level, which is supposed to be 2%, which they haven't been doing, and keeping unemployment rates also at a reasonable level, which they have been doing. Unemployment rates have been low, and we've been steadily adding jobs every month. Even this last month was a surprise to economists. Like every month, there's just been more jobs being added than the predictions are. So, interesting time for sure. The other part, and then we're going to switch over probably to our Kahoot here in a second. The other one is fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is maintained by the nation's legislative body. So we have a legislative body over in Lincoln, right? The state legislative body that actually does run a little bit of state fiscal policy, but for the most part, when we talk about fiscal policy in macroeconomics, we're talking about the national legislative body. We're talking about Congress, the House of Representatives, and the Senate, right? And these are policies that involve the government spending money, which they know how to do well, and taxing money, which not so much. Easy to decrease taxes, very difficult, nigh impossible to increase taxes. We'll get into the issues with that later on. Everybody hates taxes. I hate taxes. I'm not saying I like paying taxes, but they're a necessary evil. All right, we'll pick up on section 1.3 on Wednesday.